Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Meet the Artist series. My name is Tommy Hensel, and I am the director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley Community College. Moraine Valley is located in Palos Hills, Illinois, which is a southwestern suburb of the city of Chicago. We have a 600-seat proscenium theater and 125-seat black box theater, and do a pretty robust season of shows in both theaters in a normal year. Obviously, as you all know, back in March, we were all told to shut down like every theater in the country. So we closed our theater, we canceled all of our performances, rescheduled them for the fall, and then realized that we couldn't do them in the fall. So we rescheduled them for the spring, and then I've now rescheduled some of those for the summer. So we're moving ahead with shows starting in the spring. But between now and then, we looked at the schedule and thought we can't just sit here and do nothing. We needed to do something to stay in, for us to stay engaged, but also for all of our patrons and friends and co-workers out there and the artists. So we reached out to a number of our friends in the industry and said, hey, if we did a weekly Meet the Artist series, would you be interested in joining me just to chat about yourself and about your work and what you do? And so far, we've only had one person say no, and the only reason they said no was because they lacked the technology at the time where they were being quarantined. And that person actually, I think, is going to sign back on. So pretty much everybody said, sure, we would love to chat. So we've set up this great weekly series. And I've talked to some amazing artists, most of whom have been on our stages in the past several seasons. But I looked ahead into next season, the things that we've already booked, and thought, hey, there's some great artists that have not been on our stage recently or at all. In this case, tonight's guest has been on our stage, but quite a long time ago. So we thought, well, okay, we have people coming up next year, so why don't we interview some of those people so you can get a little sneak peek of who they are and what they do. So I'm very excited tonight to welcome to our broadcast studio, as part of our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, my good friend Wilfredo Rivera, who is the co-founder and artistic director of Cerqua Rivera Dance Theatre. So let's add Wilfredo. There you are. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing well. Great. Cheers. As people know, I always try to drink a glass of wine on my weekly series. So last week we interviewed Jorge Perez from Ensemble Español, and I did pair my wine. It was a Spanish wine with him. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's any wine from Honduras, so I decided just to go with something that was in my refrigerator. So we're drinking a German Riesling. Yeah, a little too close to the equator for wine there, but. So thank you so much for joining us. And also, I'm excited that we're able to reach out to so many wonderful people like you and Jorge and other people to help us celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month that started last week and goes until October 15th. So I'm excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit, for the people who don't know about Cerqua Rivera Dance Theatre, tell me a little bit about the company, because I think it's nice to have some context about where the company came from and what it does, and then we can dive a little more into some personal conversation.
Sure. Well, at its core, at its heart, Cerqua Rivera is it's a diverse group of artists that we seek to unpack, celebrate, and explore contemporary concerns and personal narratives that really connects and are part of our shared communities. So that's basically what we do, and we do that through contemporary choreography, the creation of original music to accompany the choreography, and also the addition of projection design, visual design work. So it's a multi-sensory, multimedia experience for the audience.
So one of the things I know about the founding of the company, because you're celebrating 20 years now,
yes.
Correct? Is that there were three of you. So there was a musician, a dancer, and a visual artist who all collaborated. So tell me a little bit about that, like, three-part collaboration.
Yeah, so at that time, 20 years ago, when I was very young and naive and inexperienced, Matlab, visual artist, Just Cerqua, composer, vocalist, and myself as an independent, at that time, dancer and choreographer, our lives and our personal lives and artistic lives combined together, they intersected. So we were in our own rights very well grounded in our own careers. But we felt the need to be able to communicate artistically, not only with each other, but the conversations that we were having were so engaging and personal and deep. And at the same time, we saw how it correlated or could correlate with a vast majority of people that we just it started thinking about how could we create art that will bring the three of our voices together into one. And him having his Irish, European American ancestry, Joe with his Italian American, me as a Latino, not only were different types of art forms being combined together, but also different cultural journeys and life stories as well. So from the get-go, there was this kind of formatting idea of multiculturalism, different voices intersecting together to just kind of bring a solidarity to the human experience here in America. So that's how that it all started. So we just started playing around with ideas. Joe started feeding us some compositions. I started moving to it. Matlab started creating pieces for it. And then in time, we just started developing and focusing more on particular themes to create individual narratives. So the stories would have an arc to them, like a story, like a playwright or like a movie, for example. So that's how it all started.
So I'm curious, I mean, I know now with all the technology that a lot of the artistic component is done with projection, but 20 years ago, were you using projection at that point? Or how were you incorporating Matlab's artwork into the shows back then?
Oh my gosh, it was really, really crazy, hands-on physical work, no kidding. So Matlab is an expansive creator, huge murals, very heavy, thick, multi-layer painting oil. So they were live. We had live paintings. So the paintings were fly up and down. And we had paintings that were like the full screen of the theater. So we had to like actually have specific transportation for just the artwork because we were traveling with the actual artwork live back then. So yeah.
And for those people who are watching this broadcast tonight who work at Moraine Valley or have been there, if you go to our library, outside of the library, there are a series of panels, painted panels. Those are all Matlab's artwork. Because Matt was a huge supporter of Moraine Valley. And so we have this beautiful installation of his artwork outside the library. And I think that most people who work at Moraine don't have a clue where those panels came from.
And that was the original connection with the Fine Performance Arts Center, was not only Matlab, but and his family and his involvement in the community, but also one of our board members at that time, Mike Koki, was a part of the staff at Moraine Valley as well. So that's how we came about to early on in the origins of the company come to perform.
Yep. So it was interesting. I look back in our history, you and River North were two of the companies that were the earliest dance companies that performed on our stage when the theater was finished building in 1993 and opened in 1994. So, you about the time that you were starting to perform, River North had been there a few times already. So, so Frank Chavez has a long history with our facility as well. But you were some of the first dance companies that graced our stage all those years ago.
That's so exciting, yeah.
And I'm so excited that we're bringing you back next year.
Finally.
Yeah, so for everybody who didn't know, I had Cerqua Rivera booked to perform in October of this year. But of course, we had to cancel everything. So we've moved you to October of next year. So just moved it by a year. It'll still happen. But they're coming to our stage next year instead of this season. But yeah, I think that's exciting. I had forgotten until I really thought about it and was thinking about this interview that we had those Matlab panels. And I've been told, and I don't know if Jane Bentley is watching tonight. She is one of my colleagues at Moraine Valley who might know the answer to this question. I think there are some panels that were not installed that are just still in storage somewhere on campus. And if they are, I would love to figure out a way to get them installed on campus somewhere because Matt's artwork is extraordinary.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's massive. Usually it's heavy. It's very dense. It's a lot of imagery, a lot of stories that you can get out of just taking the art in. He's saying a lot in a short amount of space. So
which I think is awesome because connecting that type of artist with the type of work that you do, it makes total sense because it's so layered and intricate and interesting with so many different narratives going on. and then your dance, and then Joe's music. I think all of that is just amazing.
And that's one of the things that pulled me in from the beginning. As a professional dancer myself, I grew up with music. My parents are musicians, originally from Honduras. So I grew up around music and around poetry. That was just part of family experiences. And as a professional dancer, I missed those kind of components. So for me, it felt going back home, and it felt an expansion of what I knew culturally to be a good fit. And also resonates with me because our lives, all of our lives, individually and collectively, are so rich and dense and texture, and there's just so much to ourselves that at times I feel like just dance or just music or sometimes just a visual picture doesn't bring justice to someone's character or someone's journey, for example. So I think for us, it's very joyful to find the happy medium and how we can bring these three artistic elements together to form a collective voice. So they're supporting each other, not screaming at each other, but in a way that there is a structure, in a way that we're moving the storyline forward like a musical. You know, you have your script, and you have your dance, you have your singing, but it's all propelling the story forward. So that's how we view ourselves. It's like how to do that, but it's kind of tricky because there's really not like a history to go back to, like, oh, this is how it's been done in the past. So we're just kind of creating our own history as we go along, which makes it really exciting and really scary.
Hey, but you know what? There's something to be said for being able to create your own reality. Come on.
Yeah. So every piece embarks us in a new experience, in a new journey. So, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's perhaps because I'm drinking a German wine right now that suddenly made me spark on. I remember in college, when I was getting my music degree, my undergraduate degree, I had all these electives that I could take, and there was this full semester elective that I took that was a study of Wagner's Ring Cycle. And when I was digging into Wagner, one of the things that he wrote about was this term called Gesamtkunstwerke in German, which means totally revealed artwork. And so his whole concept was that opera needed to be music and dance and spectacle and everything. It needed to be all of it at one time, because that was the only way to truly tell the story, is through all of those elements working together. And as a director, as I got older and started directing shows, I always kind of remembered that concept that, you know, that you need it's all equally important, and it informs each other. And, you know, one thing by itself can tell a story, but it's not nearly as interesting as it is when you can have music and dance and art all working together at the same time.
Yeah, and that's honestly, Tommy, this is how I view Cerqua Rivera. It's like it's a new voice resembling theater with the sensibilities of opera as well. It is grand, it is big, but at its core is all these very organic personal narratives that we're just painting into a universal story, so that everyone in the audience can feel embraced, can feel swayed by it, can be moved by it. So, you know, transporting those individual narratives to that universal language is the interesting challenge, and it's a beautiful challenge to have. And yeah, I think audiences at first and continue to be a little bit hesitant because it might sound like a lot to take in, but when you're actually in the space together and you feel the music bathing you, and you feel the vibrations of live musicians, the cello and violin, and the saxophones and the percussion. And it's just a natural instinct to feel your seat, to feel the carpet underneath your feet, you know, trembling a little bit. And if there's a connectivity there to live music and to the singing voice when our vocalists are singing as well, and being expressed through the bodies moving in space, that just add another such an organic added dimension to that experience. You know, we just find that is really compelling. And then people kind of leave the theater either humming melodies that they had never heard before, or swaying to the music, or, you know, just it opens up different types of discussion just because of the sensory experience that they just had too.
So do you always use original music for your works?
For the most part, yes, we do. For all the main creative work, every once in a while, and for the fall concert, we're doing that. We're infusing a couple of standards, feature songs to feature the band and the vocalist bring the audiences even further into the company. But for the most part, it's all original work.
Yep. So one of the things I would tell the people who are watching tonight or who watch this later is if you have not experienced dance with live music, then you need to, because it's an absolutely different experience when the music is live and the dance is live at the same time. There's no offense to canned music, because
Right.
sometimes you have to do it.
Right.
I get that. I remember my revelation on that was actually with a Nutcracker. It was the first time that I ever went to a ballet, and I sat in the audience and there was a live orchestra playing. And I was so familiar with that ballet. I had seen it a jillion times, but it was always with pre-recorded music. And I don't know, there was something about that experience that made me think, why? You know, I understand now why. Why is because it's expensive. But why doesn't everybody do this? Because that visceral thing is missing. And for the dancers too, I would imagine, because I'm not a dancer, but I imagine that the sort of that adrenaline that comes from having to do slight adjustments based on the variations that happen from live performance to live performance has to be both frightening and exciting at the same time.
Well, what was innovative for us 20 years ago is because of the financial constraints that you're talking about. Companies were actually pulling away at that time of having full orchestras, and ballet companies were doing that. So here are this little, at that time, contemporary jazzy organization with this crazy 10-piece jazz orchestra playing all these types of, gospel and blues and rock and roll and classical music, just a collage of different styles of music to all this choreography was really fairly new at that time.
Yep.
So it was really exciting. Another component of us is most of the musicians come from a very, from the jazz world, from an improvisational part of their lives and a component of their artistry. So there is a lot of there's a lot of room in the compositions for the soloists to shine within the structure of the piece, and they're following the choreography, or the dancers are following that particular solo as well. So beyond the anxious vibe of dancing to slightly different tempos each night, the dancers actually have to be on their toes, literally, to assimilate where the group is going as a collective. You know what I mean? Like,
but I love that, because that means that the band is not like a separate component. It's
right.
Everybody is working collaboratively in that moment of art. So it's not like a siloed thing. It's like this. They're part of the dance.
Right, and that is such a delicate balance and in a delicate separation and distinction of why and how we do it. We don't get the musicians and sit down and prop them just with the charts in front of them and they flip the page, but they actually, we discuss what the pieces are. Like, literally, we go deep into the discussion of the structure of the piece, just like the dancers are invested in it, the musicians are invested in it. So they really understand, I'm soloing to this duet because of blah, blah, blah. I'm soloing to this structured group choreography because this is the message that we're conveying to this section of the piece. And that's why they're on stage too, because they need to be able to actually see and feel the presence of the dancers and feel that those bodies moving in front of them to equally be engaged energetically on stage. So I'm telling you, when I step on the stage as the director and feel that energy inside the group, and between takes of tech rehearsal or rehearsal in the studios, we are structuring the show, the energy is amazing. To be inside that storm is really amazing, because you can feel the pull of the bodies and the music. It's a lot to take in. So it's very exciting for the dancers. I would say that it's exhilarating. It makes you grow in such a different ways as an individual, and you probably did not have planned as a dancer to have this kind of experiences, but it's really uplifting. It's a very joyful experience.
Yep.
And to communicate with musicians and find that vocabulary, dancers and musicians as well. So there are times that they're in their own dialogue to figure out certain passages, for example, that is best to allow the artists to individually communicate with each other, to find those nuances on their own. So it's really cool to see the broader language develop between dancers and musicians that way.
So question, as a choreographer, is the music completed before you start to choreograph, or does it sort of happen together, since it's all being done original?
It varies depending on the piece. So pretty much what happens is at the end of each season, and this is what I'm going to start doing pretty soon, I come up with a set of concepts, of ideas, of storylines, and I think about what choreographers and what composers might be great contributors, collaborators to this particular theme or concept. So those concepts are the generator, is the genetic DNA of what's happened. So it can happen either way. The composer can feel swayed to start writing something, or we just go into research mode, because that's part of the organization, is research, development, and production performance. We go into research mode, and then those two things either come together or one precedes the other. Most recently, with the work that we're doing, the movement is coming first with inspirational music. And then once we have defined a particular scene, then the composer is composing specifically to that speed, to that dynamic, and to that model of the dance. So.
Awesome. That's a really fascinating, that it's kind of, I mean, I hate to use this overused word, but organic. It comes from many different places, and then suddenly it just happens.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to actually show some people just a quick snippet of your company, because one of the videos you sent me was the 2019 sort of year in review video. So I'm going to share that screen, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So let me do a quick screen share. As I remember, I tried this earlier. I forgot to click audio. So I'm going to click audio now. There we go. Wait, sharing the audio. There we are.
Get to come up and try out a couple moves with us. For this, we need 6 to 8 people. So if you're interested, go ahead and put your hand up. Thank you guys for volunteering. In this activity, we're going to explore a couple of environments that we can create through dance.
So they're going to do this phrase that they learned with Brennan in one environment. Should I tell them what it is? No, okay, it's a secret. It's a surprise. And then we're going to do ours, and it's a totally different environment. Let's do that one more time. Really use your imagination. Ready? Good job. Nice.
Anybody have an idea of what environment they saw on the left? Shout it out.
It was free.
Free environment?
Yeah, wide open space.
That. Free and wide open? What environments would be free and open? Those are beautiful descriptive words for the environment that they're in.
Watery.
Watery. Yeah. That's it. We're in water.
But I noticed that touch was a thing in this piece. Like the lack of touch, like staying really close to somebody or touching their arm or something. And also touch that was like uncustomary, like their faces together, actually touching. So I noticed there was like this border in some of the parts, and then also like closer in places that would be not normal to me.
Yeah, I like to work a lot with the connection between two people. So that is something that's really important to me, whether it is eye touching or whether it's an energetic connection. So you saw a lot of that energetic connection, I would say.
Stay away, 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 stay away.
I need to turn our microphones back on. So awesome. I loved some of the snippets there with students talking about the work. I think looking at that, you get to see a really nice view, especially in some of the earlier parts of it, of that fusion of art with music and with dance. I think that's beautiful.
Thanks. I think I would say that in the last 5 years in particularly, for various reasons, we have really grown to mastering and gotten even more mature with how we are able to bring these different collective voices together. So I'm really, really proud of where we are right now and the quality artistically of the organization. And I just really, truly believe, as you can see in those clips, that you can create sophisticated dance, very moving compositions played live, and to be able to touch people that are veteran critics of dance and live performance, and at the same time attract new folk to this. And I think we're enabling ourselves to do that successfully. Part of that is doing what you saw, a little bit of those previews, which we call inside. So for a few months during the summer, that's what we do in normal times. We do previews of the work, and we invite the audiences into the space, or we go to casual spaces and we break down, as you saw, the dancers in regular rehearsal clothes. The musicians are there, most of the band is there, and we really just show them where we are at that moment in time. Sometimes it's very, we have phrases of movement. Sometimes we have melodies or just grooves that the composer might have. Just depends on where we are in the evolution of that particular piece. But what's really more, I think, intriguing for the audience is talk about the script, talk about why we're creating this dance, why are we writing this music, how do we compose structure movement, where's the movement come from, how does a choreographer even think of the body in space to create anger, frustration, personal relationships. How does that happen? So when those dialogues start, and it really attracts, continues to attract and build our audiences. So that's part of our model and a part of our mission as well. It's catering to the already converted patrons, but also looking at how can we branch out a little bit further. Music goers that don't see dance people that really don't go see jazz live orchestra performances. How can we bring them all together at the same time?
So I mentioned before our interview started tonight, I told you that I don't really plan questions, but I always have one question that I ask everybody. So I'm going to ask you my standard question, which is, I'm always fascinated to find out from an artist, where did it start for you? Like when you were a child, what was your first introduction to the art form and especially dance? And then when was it that you said to yourself, this is what I want to do?
That's a good one. I wasn't expecting that one. That's a good one. You know, it's interesting because I do think that some of us, there is just that innate calling that is inside you. And I'm sorry to say that it's not as more interesting than that. Even like I said, my parents are musicians. They're watching this right now too. So I'm originally from Honduras. Nothing to compare to what professional, it's an underdeveloped country, third world country. So there's no professional dance there or training as we know it here. So even my parents tell me from what they remember as a 2-3-year-old kid, I would just like run across the hallway and glide and start doing crazy moves. And they still to this day, I'm not really sure where I heard Swan Lake or Swan Lake music in Honduras, but I was singing this Swan Lake music and sliding and doing all this kind of stuff. So it was from the get-go, I had this natural thing that I wanted to move. So lacking any official places to train, I did folkloric dance in Honduras.
Okay.
That started in the 3rd grade. 2nd and 3rd grade, I was part of our school's folkloric dance troops, which is a combination of indigenous dance with colonial Spanish and European dance. It's interesting intersection of various forms of cultural dance. So that's how I started, and it's something that it always pulled me. I tried singing, I tried voice lessons when I came to America. I tried a little bit of acting lessons as well, but then I knew that dance was the force that really grounded me, was the thing that was going to pull me. And even in Honduras, I started choreographing without knowing what choreography was. I started making steps, created little dance troops. I'm not kidding you. I even produced beauty pageants in my neighborhood. I was the producer of beauty pageants.
There you go.
Honduras. So I got all the little girls in the 10-block ratio to participate. I would sell tickets to their parents so there would be revenue. Yeah. And we had our gowns and our talent competition and our interview competition. I would set up a stage, the whole thing. My sister would always win. So there were so many beauty pageants that I was able to produce after.
Yeah, otherwise you couldn't go home at the end of the day, right? That's hysterical. I love that. So I'm curious because I haven't studied the sort of culture of Honduras before. What is the indigenous culture in Honduras, the pre-Spanish culture?
Well, we have Mayan and Aztec, so that's part of my Indian heritage is Mayan, Spanish, French, and those are all sort of like the bloodlines that I have. That's why I'm so, even though I'm Latino, I'm very white because of the French part of my grandfather's side of the family. So my grandmother on my mom's side, my mom looks like the typical Mayan Indian profile that you would think an indigenous woman would look like, the long black hair, prominent nose, the lips, and then my dad, my grandfather, very white, red cheeks, extremely iridescent skin. So it's an interesting combination of those forms. Yeah.
So how old were you when you came to the United States?
I was 12 years old.
Okay.
The main reason that my family came to America was because especially my mom was the leading force in getting me here. She just saw that this kid had the potential to do something else outside of what Honduras could offer at that time. So she's just sought it in herself to put my dad's and her personal lives and careers aside and make the effort to bring me to America to allow me to pursue artistic dance training. Pretty much so from the get-go, as a 12-year-old kid, I came with that particular focus in mind. And my parents were here during my junior high school years. And then after that, they saw their kind of, our job here is done. Fly on his own, and they returned back to Honduras because that's where their heart was at the time. They really came here just to open the doors for me. So.
Wow. Are they back in Honduras now?
They just recently had to return because of the whole evolution and disruption of the gang violence. So they unfortunately were part of the masses of people, the refugees that had to escape gang violence.
Oh.
Otherwise, they would still be in Honduras. That's their home. That's their native land, and that's where they wanted to retire. Unfortunately, that was not possible. So they're actually back here with me, living in Chicago with me. So.
Ah. So when you got to the United States as a 12, 13-year-old, what was your dance journey? What was the trajectory that got you eventually to Cerqua Rivera?
So in New Orleans, I started with the New Orleans City Ballet. Melanie Montalto Ryan was my first ballet teacher, and originally from New Orleans. She danced in New York. She came back from New York and started teaching dance classes in New Orleans. And this is it's just coincidence and faith and all of those powers of the universe combining. The first studio that my mom took me to happened to be this ex-professional ballerina's first dance studio that she just opened, and it just recently opened. So I walked into somebody's mentorship that was really like the best situation that I could walk into. And she mentored me into getting into the New Orleans City Ballet, mentor me into what types of dance I should pursue, put me in a whole regimen of classes. So we had a goal, her and I, you have 4 years. At the time I was 15 years old. We have 4 years to get you from a complete beginner, get you through structured training to be ready for a pre-professional training. So that's what we did. So we were on it. Modern, jazz, ballet, the High School for the Performing Arts, the whole bit. So when I graduated high school, I moved to Chicago to continue that next level of pre-professional training. So she was amazing.
Wow.
And, yeah, I landed here and I auditioned for both Ghost Giordano, which you know them well too, our good friends at Giordano's, and I auditioned for Hubbard Street for their training programs. And again, faith and hard work and all of those circumstances, I was accepted into both programs, and I took Hubbard Street. And 9 months into Hubbard Street, Sherry Sunker started River North Dance Chicago.
Yeah.
Me in that training program and picked me up and put me into River North.
That's awesome. I had forgotten that you were with River North. I haven't talked to Sherry in forever, but she and I go back a long way. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was Sherry and 7 of us that started River North on Sunday afternoons. Yeah. And she, what River North blossomed into. In a year, we were touring nationally with River North. So yeah, it happened all like really consecutively and in a relatively short amount of time. So I'm just very lucky to say that this is all that I've always known in my life is dance and the arts. So.
That's awesome. I think that's amazing though. And it's so funny because I would say at least 80% of the people that I have asked that question to about how did it start for you have said a similar thing to yours, is that they just felt like they were born with this impulse to be, to be whatever, they are in the arts. I told someone recently, I think I've always felt like art chooses you. You don't necessarily choose art. When you have that compulsion, you have to do it.
Right.
If you don't, you're miserable. And it's funny because I remember I took a little hiatus in the 90s from the theater and tried something else. And after a couple of years, I was utterly miserable. Even though I was successful and I was making plenty of money and I was doing well in this other industry, I just couldn't deal with it because I needed to be back in the theater. So yeah, I get it.
And then, that's something as I get older too, that trying to convey to and trying to share with new talent and young people is that fearlessness, because it's in all of us to be fearless and to move forward and to have that fortitude, that bravado about our spirit, and just trusting that things will work out in time. But yeah, I'm pushing forward. It was amazing. I saw it in my parents. Now that I'm an adult, if I think of living my life as I know it for my kid to move to another country with another language, and be there for 6 years, that commitment, it's amazing when looking back at it. So gotta get done kind of. And you do what you have to move.
So my first time seeing your company perform was last year when you did a joint program at the Auditorium Theater with Ensemble Español Spanish Dance Theater. One of the piece that you premiered there was called American Catracho, right? So tell me a little bit about that piece. We have a film clip of that I want to show people, but I really want to know a little bit about where that piece came from.
Yeah, Catracho is a perfect example of this collaborative spirit that we were talking about. Catracho, it's a slang word for someone from Honduras. And the whole idea came about taking my personal experience as a child, as an immigrant child, and the circumstances and the different levels and things that you experience to get to where, for example, I am now, right? But expanding that, like I was saying before, taking that personal narrative and adding so much more to it. So we took narratives from the current African-European migration crisis. We took storylines from islanders trying to make it into Central America and in South America as well. And current narratives right now in our own Mexican-United States border. So taking a lot of children, immigrant stories, young people's stories, parents' stories, and like I said, African-European stories, and meshing all of this stuff together into a narrative. That was a 4-year process. And it was 3 different choreographers, a theater director, a art therapist professional here in Chicago, and a social worker that specializes working with immigrant families. And obviously the composer, Joe Cerqua, as well. So all these people collaborating. Every year we develop 8-10 minutes of it, a segment of it. So it takes us through the whole journey of leaving your natural land, your homeland, and starting the process of going through different regions to get to that other side, whatever that other side might be. In this case, we allude that is in fact America. And the cool thing about it, Tommy, is like it was part of Hispanic Heritage Month at that time as well. And even though it's coming from a Latino perspective, from other Latino people that have seen it and experienced it, and people also that are not Latino that have experienced it, they feel connected to it. They see the human perseverance, that indomitable bravado spirit, you know, that engaging spirit of moving forward, that fortitude, all of that resonates with themselves too. And at the end, there is a feeling of joy and of hopefulness. You know, there's always more road ahead. We haven't arrived yet. And especially right now when we think where we are, we haven't even arrived yet. So there is that sensation at the end of the road still onward, still moving us forward.
So I want to show a clip of American Catracho, and then we'll come back and have a little more conversation. But let me do a screen share on this. Yeah, and I'm going to click audio this time. Look, it says share audio. I'm clicking that right now.
My tongue is divided into two. My tongue is divided into two. By virtue, by virtue, by virtue. Coincidence or heaven? Words jumping out of my mouth, stepping on each other, enjoying being a voice for the message, expecting conclusions.
There we are. Awesome. I love that. I love that. And you know what I love? I mean, I love the whole thing, but I love when you pull the musicians into the choreography. I think that's just beautiful.
Those are special moments.
Yeah, they really are. And I think musicians aren't used to it. And I think it's awesome when you push them out of their comfort zones too.
It's fun. Those rehearsals are really fun, trying to figure out those little moments with them. So have a good time.
So I know you've got an exciting project coming up soon. So tell me a little bit about what the performance coming up.
Yeah, so given the recent COVID situation, we've had 2 virtual previews thus far of the new work. And we're going to conclude the season. First of all, we're very fortunate and lucky, and it takes a lot of fortitude to keep going for as a dance organization right now. But yeah, we're going to have fall concerts featuring new works October 25th. And we're going to be at the Studio 5 Performing Arts Center in Evanston. That's going to be on a Sunday evening, our only live stream show. We're going to have a reduced Cerqua Rivera ensemble, 5-piece live band, and 4 live dancers on stage. We're going to be masked dancers. And then we're going to rebroadcast that show that following two weekends after that, November 6th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So you can catch it on the October 25th live as it's happening, or you can get tickets for that rebroadcast as well.
That's awesome. So have you been rehearsing that then during the pandemic?
Yeah, so how it all started, my executive director, Catherine Painter, did an amazing job of securing some of the relief funds early on. We're able to conduct our rehearsals, virtual rehearsals, Zoom rehearsals during the month of June, and we came back to live rehearsals in mid-July. So yeah, during the month of June, believe it or not, I had 8-10 dancers with 3 choreographers trying to create via Zoom from their homes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then we transfer that to the studio space and rotating our dancers to keep the numbers in a safe way. So we have the dancer, first we had the dancers rotating different cast to the rehearsal space. So we're building 2 new pieces. Mood Swing is one of them, and Identity City is another one. So people will be presented by work that is really responsive and reflective of the current time right now.
So at the bottom of everyone's screen, you should see the website, cerquarivera.org. So definitely go to that website because you can get information, click through, get tickets, the whole thing. So it's going to be done without an audience, correct? Or is there going to be
an audience? Yeah, without an audience, correct. But it will be live for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar. We were talking earlier. Our friends at the Chicago Tap Theater did a similar performance earlier this summer, which I thought was really well done. So I'm very looking forward to seeing yours because I think it's so exciting. You know, we're all at home and we can't really go out, but we can see something live that's happening in that moment. So it's not. I mean, it's lovely to see something that's been pre-recorded. Don't get me wrong on that, especially when it's a pre-recorded of a live concert. But there's something visceral about being there in the moment.
Yeah, we're really excited about sharing this work and sharing the now too. Like I said, the dancers, for obvious safety measures, will be masked. So our costume designer is designing masks to accompany the design of the costumes. Amazing Jordan Ross doing the costume designs for us. She's a resident designer. But yeah, Mood Swing, for example, I have 4 very distinct, innovative choreographers on individual responses to COVID. Very, very interesting takes. And also responding to the social unrest that we've been experiencing as well. So the tones of what we've been experiencing will be part of the concert. So we're really excited to share that with the audience too. So.
Well, you and I both, I'm sure, agree with this, is that art, I think that really good art has an obligation to make a social statement. I think that artists need to be at the front of illuminating social issues. We don't necessarily have to be preaching to anybody or getting in someone's face with a controversial concept. We just need to get the dialogue out there. And I think art is so powerful at doing that.
I so totally agree with that. That's really the motto that I live by, and how I aspire to continue to envision the place of Cerqua Rivera in our community. Yeah, the other piece, Identity City, is really about unpacking and exploring gender non-conforming individuals and transgender individuals, which has become a huge part of the dialogue, sometimes more quietly than others. What circles you're in, and depending on your family, quite honestly. So I seen that explosive evolution of transgender youth and people denominating themselves in different terms, and seeing the confusion that has ensued as well. Propelled us to think about, okay, how can we? You're right, exactly that. How can we put this on the table for people to feel more comfortable, maybe discussing it and bringing it up? And I'm learning as I'm going along as well. So it's all about evolving in the best way possible that I can, and that we can as artists ourselves too. So
because I mean, I must admit, I am woefully unsure about any of the issues of the transgender community. I understand the community is there, but I know so little about transgender issues. I don't know how to talk about the issues. And it's interesting because you would think that, that I would, being who I am and being in the field that I'm in, but it's hard because, especially when you're dealing with issues that have been sort of suppressed for so long and nobody has wanted to talk about them. It was kind of like, those of us who came out in the 80s, with the whole conversation of being gay. It was so hard to talk about it for 20 years because there was no context, because it had been suppressed for so long.
It has a dark and a dark undertone to it. It's not positive. Yeah. It's something that you shouldn't speak about. Yeah, and it's the same thing now with the gender fluid and non-binary and gender queer folks too as well. They're there, they exist. And what I see a lot of times is the shouting matches between communities because we're trying to find that language. You know what I mean? It's like, what is that? How do we understand each other?
Yeah.
But this is one of the main reasons that we started exploring these pieces too. Yeah, you're right. I know very little, and I'm learning as our leading artists are unpacking their lives for us to lean into their lives, into their perspectives, into their journeys, and allowing us to share that with us, and allowing us to then create pieces around them and for them and reflective of them, and how us as outsiders can be invited into that space. Where do we belong in their space, and how can they let us into their space? So these are conversations that we're having, and starting to tear down those differences to look at the commonalities too. So
yeah, I think there's a tremendous power in vulnerability when someone is willing to open up and share their story in a really human, vulnerable way. There's great power in that because they have the chance to speak their piece, but also we have a chance to learn something that we didn't know, and from a real honest place. I think that the great art has to be honest. It really does. And I think that's one of the powers of your company, is the work is so honest and grounded in truth. I think that's a powerful thing.
Thank you. Thanks. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
So we're just at the end of our time.
Really?
Yeah, we are. I told you we would get to an hour. We would go, So is there anything that you'd like to bring up or say before we end tonight? Is there anything that we didn't talk about?
No, I would just I know it sounds like a commercial, but it is more so than that. I would just ask people to look us up, get a ticket if you can. You'll be moved, you'll be invited into a wonderful, safe space that is really reflective of our American experience right now. And you'll have a great time and you'll make new friends. So check us out.
CerquaRivera.org. Right at the bottom of your screen. So everybody take a look at that. It's easy to remember. So I'm going to take it off. There we go. So Wilfredo, thank you so much. And like I say to everybody, please don't leave when I take you out of the broadcast studio. Stick around. Once we go off the air, we'll chat for a little bit. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was lovely to spend time with you.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We continue next week with our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. We welcome Marco Villeja and Melanie Juarez, who are both members of the Mariachi Gerencia de Mexico, which is an amazing mariachi ensemble in Chicago that's basically students. Both of them are in high school and are extraordinary musicians, keeping the traditions of mariachi alive. So please join us next week as we continue celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And then we had a reschedule from an earlier cancellation, and on October 6th, we are finally welcoming one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Charo, to our studio. I'll be interviewing Charo on October 6th to talk to her about her life and to help continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. So please join me next week for Mariachi Gerencia de Mexico, and then following that for Charo. And with that, I am going to end tonight's broadcast. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight, and I certainly hope to see you all again soon.